you very much for everyone taking the time to join us today. It's another one which we've had many signups for. I think we've managed to catch a lot of the topics at the moment in terms of particular trends of things that people are interested in, and obviously customer voice and things at the moment is a big part of housing associations' priorities in terms of making sure that those customers are listened to. So we're going to be looking at that today from a bit of a digital lens. But yeah, just to begin with some brief intros, so it won't take too long on this. My name's Jacob, if you haven't seen me before. I'm head of sales here at Prodo, so work really closely with the rest of the guys on looking to bring new Prodo customers on board, helping out as many housing associations as we can with the products and services that we offer. But as a whole, Prodo, we are a digital transformation partner agency, and where we sort of fit into the sector, which has been spanning over 20 years now, with hundreds of housing associations during that time, is we look to try and use our in-house digital expertise and capabilities to be a force for good, to help improve customer experience as a whole, but also develop internal efficiencies as well, ultimately with the output being looking to help digitize services to free you guys up to spend time with those customers who need your support most. So that's a very brief intro into Prodo. I'll let some of the guys on our side say a quick hello. We've got a few Prodo people join us today, and then we'll say hello to Nicola too. Do you want to jump in, Liv?
Yes, hi, I'm Liv. I work within the account management team, and I'm also the account manager for Stockport. So I've had the pleasure of working with Nicola and the team for about 2 years now since I joined. So I think you'll find all the tasks and things, activities that Stockport Homes did over the past few years really exciting, and hopefully you take something away from today. Shall I pass over to Jen?
Thanks, Liv. God, I went really croaky then. I'm Jen. I'm head of client services at Prodo, for anyone that's not met me before. So work really closely with Liv and Joe and the rest of the wider team at Prodo to help our clients out. I've been with Prodo for nearly 8 years, so I'm very familiar with all the work that we've done over the last 7 to 8 years with Stockport Homes Group, and Nicola kind of being at the helm of most of that work for all of that time. So really excited to see what we're going to be talking about today, and hope everyone finds it really interesting. I'll hand over to Joe.
Thanks, Jen. So yeah, I'm Joe. I work alongside Liv and Jen in our client services team. So work with lots of our lovely housing association clients, and just helping them really achieve their sort of digital aspirations and get to work on lots of lovely exciting projects. So yeah, looking forward to the session today.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks for those intros. Yeah, as you would have all seen from the promotional content we put out there about this session, we are joined today with a bit of a guest speaker, so Nicola from Stockport Homes Group. So I'll let you introduce yourself and Stockport as well, if that's all right, Nicola.
Okay, yeah. So hi everyone, I'm Nicola, so I'm the Digital Marketing and Comms Manager at SHG. So my role covers a lot of stuff around digital, but predominantly it's managing our 8 websites across the group. So within that, Stockport Homes website is the kind of key one. It's the core of our customers. It's linked to the Almo, basically, that covers all the council housing for Stockport. But yeah, we do have other parts of the group as well. So Viaduct, that looks after our shared ownership, 360, that's our kind of construction arm, Skylight, that's our charitable arm, yeah, and several other brands within that as well. So Carecore for an older person's pendant, Dash Architecture, yeah, so kind of a wide range of things, but yeah, predominantly looking at after the websites.
Lots and lots to go at, and lots to manage in your team there, Nicola. But it's been a great one for us to work with you on throughout, to be fair. So yeah, I'll just give a bit of a brief background in terms of what we're going to be talking about today, and then we'll dive into a little bit of an open discussion in terms of how the project went and how you went about getting those customers on board. So yeah, I suppose the background for today is all kind of driven by there's obviously quite a growing emphasis at the moment on customer voice generally throughout the sector, particularly with the guidance sort of released by the regulator in the white paper a couple of years ago, and the tenant satisfaction measures, the quite publicly shown exposures when things don't go quite right, so that's not taken into consideration by the ombudsman, etc. So it's really important at the moment, and sort of going forwards, for RPs to prioritise those customer needs, as I'm sure you're all aware of, and I'm sure why you're here today. But it's important for that to happen throughout all sort of initiatives generally, and be able to demonstrate the fact that you've done so in many ways as well. including, of course, crucially, the development and sort of creation of digital platforms and the design around those, which are, of course, quite often externally facing, put in place for customers themselves. So it's really important in that sort of digital development process to make sure customers are involved, but it can be quite challenging. I'm sure some of you might be familiar with the fact that it's difficult, one, to sometimes get the buy-in from customers to sort of join in on that process, but also kind of balance that feedback between the initial sort of scope of work, so what you're looking to achieve with it, and make sure that you're ticking the box or at least getting that customer buy-in to make sure the end product is designed around them, whilst also still keeping that sort of organizational scope of work and goal of project in mind as well to make sure it stays on track. So with this being quite a sector-wide challenge at the moment, something in my position and the client services team position, we hear this quite a lot in terms of when we're putting forward digital solutions and projects. All of our clients and the people we speak with in the sector are really driven to involve customers, but it's often a little bit of a challenge, and sometimes it's quite difficult to do so. So that's the reason why we want to sort of hold today's session, really. We like to make use of these housing hives to hear about success stories and hear about how organizations have worked through this sort of challenges really well and have resulted with some great positive outcomes. So Nicola's hopefully going to talk us through the aspects from a SHG point of view. But yeah, I suppose one of the nice positive output of this is and some of you probably would have seen this as well, is a recent award which SHG won for Best Digital Experience, thanks to that customer-centric approach that we took as a partnership for the websites. Very, very collaborative, and it is informed heavily by customer research and sort of feedback as a whole generally. So a little bit of a brief background on the project from our point of view as SHG's partner. We first implemented like a multi-site installation essentially for these websites, all held within the single CMS, which was quite quick and easy for Stockport then to spin up subsidiary websites for different purposes really, really quickly, as and when those sort of brands were developed and sort of grown. So it sort of served the purpose for a time, but the fact that it was all in the same CMS meant that the styling was quite similar. The templates and modules available were all the same, other than, you know, color schemes and logos and obviously the content in there. And as SHG, and feel free to add to this if I miss anything out, Nicola, but as the group sort of progressed and grew quite rapidly, to sort of maximize that digital space and enable those companies to sort of benefit from the fact that the commercial gain of these companies will be able to be invested back into the social housing side while supporting customers and obviously the wider community. The websites needed to be much more tailored to what those organizations' specific goals were, and obviously the differing user goals, user journeys, and what the purpose of those specific organizations were. And that initial sort of multi-site served the purpose for a time, but then ended up quite outdated, to say, I suppose. Digital moves on really quickly in terms of UX best practices and designs, doesn't it? But as those organizations grew as well, it was more appropriate for SHG to have specific digital presences. So I suppose it presented a great opportunity for you guys at Stockport, Nicola, to involve customers on this process and make sure that those websites are really sort of driven behind individual needs of those organizations, but the people sort of who are serviced by those organizations as well. So I thought it'd be a good time now for us to run through potentially some of those, maybe a quick overview. I know you gave an overview at the start of what all these organizations are and sort of the purpose of them, but maybe a quick one on that, and then we can jump into the actual project itself and sort of how that run, if that sounds all right with you.
Yeah. So a quick
Cool.
overview of each of the different sites. Yeah, as I said, the Stockport Homes one is the core one. So that's for our core customers who are part of the ALMO. They're the people that are looking for tenancies, trying to find a home with us. So that's the key one. But then, we've got Viaduct that covers, that covers our shared ownership arm. So where we're selling properties that we've kind of built, new build properties, and then we've got we've got quite several, but we only did 6 across this. So it's the Viaduct one. We did the pantry one, which is our like food model. So that's across the country now. We've got over 100 pantries across the country. So that's one of them. We also created an SHG website, which we didn't have before. So a group one. Because we really wanted to showcase, as we'd set up the group and all the companies underneath wanted to showcase SHG as a whole. And then we had our Skylight website. So that's the one that's our kind of charitable arm. So it does a lot of kind of employment support work, does link in with the pantries as well. So it's all the kind of softer support that we provide to customers within that as well. And then the last one that we did was the Care Call one. So that's got an e-commerce offering. So that's for our pendant alarm service. So predominantly for older people or people that have falls or any kind of vulnerabilities. Yeah, and it had a brand new e-commerce platform that we've not had previously on the site as well.
Cool, great stuff. Thank you for those. Did I anything to add on the sort of the purpose for separating these out? Did I sort of cover that okay, or anything in terms of the purpose that you thought I missed there?
Yeah, you covered that really well. It was that as those developed, those companies, yeah, the branding and the style for them just really developed. The audiences, like you say, that they were very different. So it didn't, what we had for the kind of templates didn't really meet those needs anymore. Yeah. And we just needed to separate them, kind of get that design, get that feedback from those individual audiences and really tailor those offerings. Yeah.
Ideal. Okay. I suppose that brings us on to then what we actually did together. And I know you guys put a hell of a lot of work in on your side in terms of sort of planning for this and getting the feedback from those different groups of customers. So what was the initial sort of step then in terms of planning for the re-implementation of these websites to make sure that the output was geared around that customer voice and make sure it serviced them correctly?
For us, really, customers are just at the heart of everything we do as an organisation. So when we came to look at the project, it was intrinsic really to make sure that we'd weaved in that kind of customer engagement all the way through. So we did have right from the off, we had a customer board member, even on the tenders. So when Prodo themselves came to pitch, we had a customer board member there asking live questions on the pitch. Yeah. So it was just making sure that thread of having a customer involved all the way through was just right there from the start. It was within our project, within our plans. It wasn't something that was an afterthought. It was just always there that customers would be involved. And yeah, for the Stockport Homes one, with it being our kind of core of our customers, our tenants, and like leaseholders and everything, then that kind of had an extra level of customer engagement, but it's something we've kind of planned for and scheduled for to make, I think, important to make sure that we've got those plans in place, but we also had the time to be able to respond to those comments and those changes. So it wasn't just asking customers, you know, for the kind of sake of it and for like ticking a box. It was making sure that we could actually implement any of those changes.
Yeah, it was quite nice actually, and a bit of a change for us when we did come to that sort of presentation phase where we were looking to hopefully progress that sort of project with you guys. Obviously, it's a big part of my role, Jenny's role, Joe and Liv's to sort of be involved in those presentations. And I think it's probably the first time whereby we had some tenants involved, you know, from that tenant board member actually involved in asking us as the digital supplier live questions about what the potential output might look like. How do we go about making sure it sort of services customers and the types of functions that they might look to see on there. So no, it was I suppose a bit of a refreshing change for us as well, because usually it is purely just internal that we're pitching to. So so that was really interesting actually fielding those different types of questions. But I know obviously with us being in a position where we'd been working with you for a few years prior, we obviously had access to the existing, well, I suppose now pre-existing websites as well, didn't we? So I know we incorporated Hotjar on the existing Stockport Homes group website to track, I suppose, user behaviour and also looking into Google Analytics and things. So anything you want to elaborate on there in terms of utilisation of those platforms, Nicola, on the pre-existing websites?
Yeah, that really helped. I mean, we'd kind of done our own customer survey to start with, so we kind of had an existing base of feedback from what customers liked and what they didn't like from the existing site. We had the Google Analytics from the existing site, so we could see what pages people were going to, which were the most popular areas. But the kind of Hotjar it went that extra level. It just gave us more detail, so we were able to see through the heat maps which areas people were focusing on, where they were kind of getting stuck, how far they were scrolling down pages. That was like a really big one for us, that we're discovering that you might have loads of information and loads of content on that page. You might have a key link that you want them to click on, but they're not getting to that information. It's too far down the page. So that had a massive impact for us. Yeah,
it's a really good way. We've seen some good. We've managed to get hold of some good insights with other projects as well using that sort of method. So typically, it's, you know, as an example, if we can see in GA the fact that a page has quite high levels of traffic, you know, people are reaching it nice and easy, but maybe the conversions on that page or clicking through to the next level is a little bit low. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That Hotjar insight gives us the view to see, okay, the people are finding it, what they're actually doing on there and what's stopping them from moving to the next step. And yeah, it is quite often the scroll depth heat maps will give you that insight, isn't it, in terms of that key snippet, that golden piece of information, or the point to make an inquiry or move on into the portal, whatever it is sometimes just needs a little bit of a repositioning, doesn't it, which can have a great benefit. I know you, there was a particular change that we talked about the other day, which escapes me now, but we talked about making a change off the back of Hotjar, which had some interesting impact from a positioning of a CTA perspective, wasn't there?
Yeah, so that was, I think we've been doing a few different things since the site's launched, one of which is kind of more of advanced analytics, goals and events tracking. And I think from the last quarter, the output of that was that the button for my online, is it called, Nicola, was placed at the bottom in the mobile navigation. And actually we've now got we moved that to the top, and the last quarter results, which we are actually going through later today, indicate that that button is now much more accessible and actually being used a lot more. And actually that's a key focus for you, wasn't it, Nicola? So I think things like that have really helped. And also the survey feedback on Hotjar was really helpful to go directly into the design feedback as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, really helpful. Yeah, and one of the things that did come out of that Hotjar initial one is we had a section called help and support. The customers seemed to just kind of not know what was underneath that, because essentially everything that we're doing is helping them. So you just found that they got a little bit stuck and were a bit confused when they got to that area. So even just making a minor change on like the heading of that to call it advice and support, and just looking at what content was underneath that, making sure things were in the right sections, that just made a massive difference, that then people are engaging with that area much more now because they understand what's under there. Whereas just, having it help, they were just like, well, everything's help. I need help with ASB. I need help with, my home. I need help with rent. And they were just kind of going there and thinking, oh, I'm not getting what I need from that area.
I think on that point as well, your team was spending an awful lot of time on the content of those pages. So actually the importance of getting people to that area is even more significant. So I think, that's made a massive change, and that's area of the site's being really well used now, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. Yes, that's where we kind of have our energy advice or our money advice kind of, it's all that kind of, like I say, softer support stuff. But it's getting much more well used now as people know kind of what's under that area.
Just whilst we're on the topic of, before we get into the sort of discussing those, I suppose, in-person surveys or sort of getting in-person responses from customers in terms of feedback, just whilst on the topic of, I suppose, positioning content and sort of tweaking things around structure and things, I know TreeJack was another bit of software which you made use of. You're probably a lot closer to this than me, Liv, in terms of how we sort of plan for that on our side, and then also your input, Nicola, from a planning and getting customers to actually use it. Do you mind running through that a little bit for us as well, from a TreeJack point of view, to plan ahead at so I suppose early on in the project, that aspect, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I'll let Nicola talk a bit more after me, but essentially we use TreeJack to, if you're not aware of what TreeJack is, it's a kind of a tool where you can input a navigation, and then we can send the link out to users to go through on using different scenarios where they would click within the navigation, and it just gives us insight into whether people are taking the journeys we expect them to take. And I think it's really important because you can use all the analytics and Hotjar feedback and have a sense of what the user might take, but actually depending on the scenario that can change. And so that TreeJack exercise was really important for us to know what percentage of people were taking the right journey. If it was a large percentage of people taking the wrong journey, we then go back to the sitemap, review it and refine it that way. So it was a really crucial thing. I don't know if you've got any other feedback on that, Nicola.
Yeah, there were definitely some specifics that we found around that we'd kind of developed the structure, and we had, like, for example, one thing we had was alterations that were under tenancy FAQs in the structure, but most respondents were just not finding it under there. So they were all going to like the home improvements area that we had. So instantly, because that's where customers are going, then we made the decision and moved that information. But we did have several examples of that where people were going to an area where you might think it's logical, or we might have fitted it in around the organisational structure and where it fits, but customers just weren't finding it. So really allowed us to see the percentage of people going down different routes and where we should put that information. And sometimes it was that we just needed to reference it in several places as well, that actually it was kind of split where customers were going. So it was making sure that whatever kind of journey the customer took, they were still getting to that information that they needed.
Definitely.
So with that, so with TreeJack being an online tool then for people to interact with, to provide feedback at that sort of planning stage of the structure, how did you go about actually getting people involved to actually give the feedback on there? Was it a case of providing a link via email, or how did you actually get customers to respond on there?
We do it in several ways. We went to our kind of regular customer engagement groups, working closely with our customer engagement team. So they kind of did some face-to-face sessions with like younger people to kind of get them to go through this process. So basically the TreeJack had several scenarios. So you might have, I've got a leaking tap, I need to report this. And then they would follow a kind of outline of the structure to see where they get to. And then it kind of logs, their kind of end position of where they think that information is. So yeah, we did some of those kind of face-to-face sessions with existing engaged customers, but we did also open it up wider. So we put it on our website, we put it on social media as well. We did have a little bit of a prize draw as well to just encourage that response, but worked really well getting kind of that larger response and not just kind of sticking to our kind of regular customer engagement groups. It was kind of a balanced like approach of making sure we're involving wider people and our regularly engaged customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff. So we've talked about the fact that we made use of Hotjar to investigate the pre-existing website sort of user behaviors and things, and also sort of supplemented with Google Analytics. TreeJack for the aspect of sort of planning that sitemap and sort of how the structure of pages might hang together. Quite often when we're moving through, I suppose, more in-project feedback with customers, it's often when we sort of move through the design of the actual look and feel of the website and the styling itself as well, because sometimes if it's later on down the line and we've got lots of feedback to change, obviously we have to go back and make a lot of amends, and then it delays sort of getting something live. So I think the design spot or design phase is usually quite a good spot to get people involved. I know that was the case with you guys as well in terms of getting some feedback from customers on the designs. How did you go about capturing that at that stage, and how did that go?
Well, we'd worked in all of the kind of feedback we'd had so far in order to produce the designs. So we had a mock-up of that kind of homepage design. And again, we went to our customer engagement groups, we went via the website, via social media, just put out a short survey that was just asking a few like top line questions, what do they think about the design? Can they find the information that they want? So we got loads of good feedback on that again that we could really action. So some of it was about the use of images. Some of it was about key links that they wanted higher up the page. Some of it was about the icons that we'd used. Maybe some of them needed to be a little bit clearer so people knew, exactly what they were. So yeah, lots of things that we could implement and make, pretty quick changes really. Yeah,
it's really key for us from our perspective as the design development agency to get hold of those snippets of feedback for us to then feed back in to make those changes before they actually start producing the code of the website itself. So, and yeah, part of that is within your control, I suppose, isn't it? When you go into the content population and you start actually putting content and imagery and things into the pages. But again, that tends to be quite an important part of the project to plan ahead for, getting all of the content ready and involved and into the CMS. So yeah, I suppose the more you can get at the design phase before moving into the technicality of the build and also getting that content in there, the better, I suppose. But that's great stuff. So that's three different parts we've talked about so far: Hotjar, GA, TreeJack, and also design side of things. We covered a little bit loosely around some prior research that you collected in terms of surveys with customer board members and things. Is that something in particular because that's something which I've spoken to another housing association about actually the start of this week, around a group of involved customers looking to consult with those to sort of plan ahead for a digital project. Sometimes I'll hear that actually works really well, and that customer group represents quite a good mixture of what the true tenant split or tenant segmentation looks like. Sometimes I'll hear this actually housing associations really struggle to, number one, bring those groups together, and number two, actually get them involved with this sort of thing. So I wondered how you went about doing that. You touched upon a little bit of an incentive a little bit before about getting involved with the surveys and things. So how did that go in terms of that surveying with them?
Yeah, I mean, we always kind of do stuff wider because, yeah, we're like everybody else. You can struggle for the kind of demographic that you get involved in some of the customer groups. So yeah, that's why we always did offer everything out on the website and social media as well. So it was wider. You know, we do have in tenant, we've got our customer scrutiny panel. So we did a lot of work with them. You know, they responded on the survey. They're always involved in the website doing checks and reviews for us. But we do have a customer engagement group that's particularly for young people as well. So yeah, the customer engagement team went out and we're kind of involving them and asking them the questions in person, because we find that they respond better that way rather than just a survey being sent to them. So I guess it was just tailoring the approach for the different audiences we've got to try and get that kind of cross section of people. We did also set up a digital like group, so for people that are more digitally minded and that wanted to be involved in any digital services we did in the website. So they were involved as well, and we made sure that they got sent out the consultation and replied as well. So yeah, I think that was an important part of it. So
it is a really important point, that, isn't it? Because in terms of like the segments of customers, some people are going to be more inclined to engage with you for these sorts of things digitally, aren't they? But yeah, to make sure that, I suppose, you get a true picture, you're going to have to go to those other groups, aren't you? Maybe offline or in other ways that you sort of mentioned. And that's a really good point in terms of making sure that the full range of people who may potentially use the website going forwards are consulted with, I guess. So that's a really good point. We'll come on to the outcomes and potential benefits around KPIs and what you've seen change off the back of that shortly. But I wondered, when it came to sort of applying for or putting your case forward for the award, which you went on to win for digital experience, what was it that you actually had to sort of go into that? Was there certain things you had to demonstrate which you did? Was it the potential benefit and output? So how did you go about getting hold of that shiny award for the trophy cabinet?
Question. The first award entry I've written, actually, so I'm sticking with my 100% record. But, yeah, for that, really, it was just kind of doing that overview of what we were trying to achieve from the project, all the kind of different tools that we'd use. So, you know, particularly for that award, they loved all the stuff around Hotjar. That was the bit that the judges had kind of pulled out, particularly that they liked. But it was all the fact that we'd done a different range of things and we'd managed to actually implement changes afterwards. So it was kind of showing that whole process that this is what we'd done, this is what customers said, and this is what we changed. And also that all kind of contributed, as Jacob's touched on, that to the KPIs and outcomes that we wanted as well. So it was just kind of linking all of that together, really. Yeah.
And then ultimately a nice shiny award, which was great to see. So on those outcomes and benefits from maybe a KPI's point of view or other pieces of positive feedback or whatever it is that you might have received, what's that look like for you since moving through the process of various different types of surveying and customer feedback, which I think was over 1,500 people in the end? What's that look for you in terms of benefits now the platforms are up and live, and what's the differences that you found?
Well, particularly for the Stockport Homes website, we were looking at wanting more customers to engage in terms of completing online forms. So for us, the difference from the old website to then the new website after that went live was a 41% increase in forms being completed, which for us a massive increase, a massive improvement. Like I said, I think a lot of that is to do with moving the links, you know, a simple thing of moving the links higher up. So Hotjar showing us that people weren't getting as far as that form link further down the page. So yeah, that was the biggest benefit for us. But we did get a lot of, you know, kind of softer comments back from customers saying, you know, it was a big improvement on the existing website, that it was much more welcoming and accessible. You know, they found things really easy, and thought the design was kind of more modern and user friendly. So yeah, it's good to get those kind of softer responses as well from customers.
I think it's a good way of looking at that, because when we talk about the potential benefits of these sorts of projects and web as a whole, really in the housing space, we don't really have that, other than the Care e-commerce side of things, we don't really have that sort of true ROI pitch to look at, do we? Like those other organizations who do sell a product, or they can look at, you know, people who've abandoned a basket versus gone through to it. So I think looking at that indicator of, okay, form submissions and conversions have gone up by 41%, that would indicate the fact that digital engagement generally has probably gone up, hasn't it, as well? If those people hadn't submitted that form, it probably would have ended up in some sort of phone call or inquiry offline, wouldn't it? So I think it's a really good way of looking at it, to be fair. Yeah. Good stuff. Okay, so we've kind of covered a lot of stuff today so far. I did just want to touch upon maybe, obviously Hotjar is an ongoing sort of tracking element of this and looking into analytics and things. Have you got specific plans in terms of where you're looking to take the website sort of platforms and suite? I know you've got so many to manage, but where are you looking to take these things next?
Well, I think as Liv touched on earlier, we have got Google Analytics kind of goal tracking in place for the Stockport Homes website and for the CareCore ones in particular. Potentially looking at some others going forward. So yourselves, you do the kind of work for us at looking at those Google Analytics. We have a quarterly report and a meeting to kind of look at those. So that enables us to just do those little tweaks, like Liv mentioned, about moving the My Online portal link to the top of the mobile view. It's all just making sure that we're continually looking at how the websites are performing and making those changes. So we're not kind of going, great, we've done this big 18-month project, 6 new websites, great, we've done the job, tick the box. We're continually looking to keep improving that. And from the CareCore side, that's the most recently launched website, so we've not had our first quarterly report on that, but that's looking at, that will go in further to, what Jacob was talking about, that we have got the e-commerce platform, so it will kind of look through the whole buying funnel and see where people are dropping off. So that'll help us kind of revise and improve that, make that process better, increase the amount of orders that we're getting through. So it's continually looking at that information, and we've got a roadmap that we're developing with yourselves as well, looking at any kind of new features that we want to look at for sites, making sure we're continually taking feedback internally to say, I've seen another website, there's a bit of a feature that we could use that would make our processes quicker, it'd make things easier for customers, and just looking out there as to what other people are doing, listening to our customers on an ongoing basis. If they say that particular part of the website, they want more information, they want different functionality. So it's just having now that ongoing roadmap, so that we don't just kind of stop and go, we're done, and revisit it in 5 years' time. We're just continually changing and developing.
Yeah, I think I'd echo that, Nicola, because I think I think people are often keen to look at what's next, what new features can we bring on, but I think we've got a good balance in terms of you being ambitious in terms of what kind of features we want to bring in, but also not losing sight of what we've done and making sure that we're continuing improving that. And think, as the landscape changes, there will be changes that need to be made. So I think that kind of two-prong approach has really worked well for us so far, hasn't it?
Yeah. It's one of those where quite often we'll obviously our position of being a digital partner is quite often it's a case of replacing or redesigning a website that has been static for so long. So I think the fact that you guys are looking to continue and improve that, informed by data from things like Hotjar and GA and general sort of feedback moving forwards, as well as all the feedback and surveying that you did pre-project and sort of within the project itself, as well as certainly the way to go about things generally with digital developments. But no, that was really really great, Nicola. So thank you for all of your input on there. I did wonder, Liv, if we've got any specific questions that anyone's popped into the chat that we might want to look to answer.
Yeah, we've had one from Jonathan. He said, did the changes improve the website's accessibility, and did customers notice the improved accessibility on the website?
Yes, it did, definitely. I mean, one of the things that we did do, because we did have a lot of feedback around accessibility in that kind of customer engagement process, was that we put a Recite Me tool on the Stockport Homes website. So that is getting quite a bit of usage, and it's kind of added to the kind of inbuilt functionality that we've got around accessibility in Umbraco. So it's just enhanced that a little bit more. But I think, generally, because we've cut down the amount of content, we've made links easier and clearer, all of that has added to improving the accessibility for people as well.
Yeah, it was a key consideration for us as well in the design process to make sure that, because it's quite a colourful brand in terms of the colour palette that you have available to you, isn't it? Certainly on the Stockport Homes Group one and the customer website, it's really crucial for us as your agency to sort of recommend to you how we might make sure we're capturing that high colour contrast to make sure that the accessibility standpoint works good from a not only content management and things like Recite Me to enhance it, but also how it's been configured and designed generally as well, I suppose. But accessibility question's a great one. It's one of those where Recite Me, because sometimes we'll get the comment that, okay, is a Recite Me or Reach Out plugin any good, because people that tend to use them have their own software or make use of the browser functionality. But I read a report from Recite Me fairly recently, and it's the usage of tools like that is still skyrocketing and going up and up and up as they become more popular and familiar. So I think it's I think it's always a good thing to think about in terms of making sure that user experience accounts for as most people as possible, regardless of their disabilities or situations, whatever it is. So that's a very good point.
I had a couple more questions. This first one, I'm not sure if we'll know the answer off to the top of our heads, but if you're able, can you give me a rough idea of how much the Recite accessibility tool costs?
It does depend. Yeah, it does depend how many pages you've got on your site and how complex your site is. But I think ours is around £1,000 a year, I think. But I mean, yeah, if you look and you can find out a bit more detail, but it does depend on your site, really. So
yeah. Okay.
And then the next question was, what was the frequency that you met and asked customers for feedback throughout the project? How did you keep them engaged with providing feedback?
I mean, like I said, it did depend, because we did a variety of different methods of meeting, and we did it around the specifics of, we looked at what they thought about the existing site. We kind of looked at the stages, and then we did something about the kind of design. We'd obviously got the Hotjar information before that, and then we did something about the structure. So really it was, we kind of looked at those key phases of the project to see at what point was best to get customers' input in order for us to then be able to make changes. So it wasn't necessarily about the frequency, it was looking at the kind of correct timing, I guess, for the project.
Milestones, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose if you think about the life cycle of the project itself, that initial planning was informed by those Hotjar on the existing website and the tree jack as well. Moving into design side of things, which tends to follow that initial planning and sort of preparation, just feedback from a design point of view. I suppose the only aspect where there wasn't customer feedback was the actual technical development and testing, but you will have managed to get enough feedback to sort of inform what that stage looks like by that point anyway, and obviously followed by feedback post launch as well, I suppose. So it does sort of span the entire life cycle, I suppose, doesn't it, to some extent?
I think another point on that is that you're gathering data throughout, and it helps justify decisions. So if you might have different opinions internally, and we have this across many clients where there is an opinion on where something should go or how something should look, and actually if you go with the data and so this is what we found out from the kind of quantitative research, but also here's what everybody said about it, it helps you with that case to say, actually we made this decision based on X, Y, and Z, and it's kind of it makes that decision making process a lot easier. Do you find that, Nicola?
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree with that. Yeah, you might have people internally that say that is where this particular bit of content's got to be, that's where it fits in the structure, that's where it's got to appear on the website. But when you get the feedback from customers and they say it's got to be somewhere else, then the customer is king. They're the ones that are trying to find the information. It's no good that someone internally can find where it is if a customer can't. So yeah, it's absolutely vital, that. Yeah.
I think we found that similarly with kind of Stockport homes and also other clients where terminology is also one that is good to test, because like you said, with advice and support, but also as housing associations, you might have ways of talking about things like report repair process. You might have very specific internal phrasing, and actually things like getting customer engagement on what should we call these things, how would you refer to it if you were looking for it, is kind of invaluable in terms of helping the customer find where to go for those inquiries.
Yeah, I think that's a really key thing that I've certainly noticed in recent projects as well with other housing associations, is that lots of internal terminology, which might be just, it's second nature to yourselves, to a customer looking at that would have little or no idea as to what that meant or what that's going to help them with. So yeah, I think just to echo what Liv was saying, having that real informed, decision making rather than it being based on, personal, thoughts and experiences, that, is definitely sort of the key forward to making that customer journey as seamless as possible, really.
That's a good point. Yeah, sometimes it ends up being almost kind of like titled or named around like internal departments, or even like if it is specifically repairs, like your example, if maybe even like trade types or something when it comes to, from a customer point of view, all they know is there's a problem with something in that house and they want to get in touch about it, isn't it? So it is about that language and sort of guiding people through with that, those sort of nudge tactics and diagnosing it, I suppose. But no, that's a good point. Any others in there, Liv? Are we about
There
time
is
to
another
wrap up?
question, yeah.
Yeah, one last one from Jonathan. If you were to review the website again, is there anything you would do differently?
Oh, good question.
Good question.
Ooh, that's a tricky question. In terms of what we did in the process, I don't think so. I probably would, just because it was part of an 18-month project to do 6 websites. I probably would have a little bit more time.
Yeah.
That'd probably be the only thing that I would do differently. I think that the process that we had, yeah, it works. Having worked on all the previous websites that we've had with Prodo, yeah, I think the process we've got, you know, we've got that kind of nailed in terms of how we do it. It probably would just be like have a bit more time, because each site basically had 3 months to do it. So yeah,
I think, yeah, I think, you know, a time is always a blessing, but the actual amount of information that you managed to get during that short period of time, and also if anybody's populated a site and know how, you know, how time consuming that can be for one site. Nicola is the queen of content population, if anyone ever needs any tips to do 6 in a row. But I think it was really impressive what you all managed to achieve during that time period. We have one last question. Has the new site helped staff with communicating with customers and supported them in their day-to-day working?
Yeah, I think it definitely has. Yeah, it's made it a lot more easy and like logical for colleagues as well to see where that information is and to be able to direct customers to it. So yeah, that's definitely been an improvement as well.
Great.
Nice.
All right, well, I think we're about out of time. I keep looking over here because I've got a big clock next to me, by the way. I'm not just gazing around the room. Yeah, I think we're about out of time. So that was a great session, I thought. Thank you very much, Nicola, for all of your input in preparation and also throughout the project itself. And as Liv said, I know you put a hell of a lot of time and effort into this. And you know, the results, I suppose, speak for themselves somewhat, but also the specifics around how you've gone about doing that with the award is a great testament to the work that you've managed to put in. So thank you very much for that, and also for joining us today and taking the time to join us in the Hive. There's a couple of things just to mention before we do leave. The next session will be a week earlier than usual. So this year we were planning to do the final Thursday of each month, with CIH Housing 23 being the last week of June, which will be there. The next Housing Hive will be on the 22nd. We're joined by Housing Solutions, one of our other customers, to talk about the app project, how they've found that so far from a self-service point of view, what the plans are next and results they've seen so far. But yeah, if any of you are at Manchester from the 27th, 29th of June, we will be there with our shiny rocket caravan, which we've just booked in to have a polish and a clean. We'll have 3 talks across the 3 days. So the Knowledge Theatre and a panel session on the Tuesday, and then another Knowledge Theatre session on the Thursday as well. So hopefully we'll see some of you there. Feel free to pop over and say hello. We'll have a few little bits and bobs to give away, as people always do when they're exhibiting these sorts of events. So hopefully we'll see some of you there. But yeah, thanks very much for your time joining today. Hopefully that was helpful for a lot of you. And once again, thank you for your time too, Nicola.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much, guys. Have a good day.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.